Let me go ahead and just take 2 minutes here. Let me go ahead and add 2 minutes to the timer. All right, welcome to the show. Let's go ahead and get it started. Here we go. All right. Let's go ahead and get this started. So, welcome to another episode of Designer's Corner. My name is Josh. I'm going to be your host. I've been a designer for over a decade now, and I'm going to teach you the ins and outs of the trade. Find me on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Go to Twitter, get all the updates for whenever I'm about to go live. There's also a check-in over there. Also on Discord, so go find us on Discord. Get help in the community. We'll help do resume reviews. We'll help do portfolio reviews and all that kind of stuff. Join the community. Get the help that you're looking for in order to advance yourself in this field. As I mentioned, the check-in system. Go over to Twitter, links in the description, and go ahead and like and retweet the posts so that then I know that you're following along, you're active, and you're participating in the community. Alright, last week in recap, we went over some tutorials for Photoshop, and we had masking. Basically, hiding an image based on a color value, or more so, a light value. So, white and black are going to be your determiners, and there's different shades in between of gray that you can use. But for the most part, what we want to take away is that the light areas will show an image, and the black areas will hide an image. We went over making a 3D effect. And with that, we saw that by manipulating the channels that are inside of Photoshop, we have the red, the green, and the blue channels. Those are the pixels that we work with. By manipulating that and setting one layer to red only, we were able to offset that picture, and Photoshop was able to calculate the amount that the other picture was offset and determine the difference between the reds and the blues there. We went over making a glitch effect. So for that, we were able to manipulate an image by selecting little strips within the image and moving it around, and this kind of gave us this cool, kind of warped, glitched, broken type of image effect, and that kind of gave us, the basis of, how to create this type of like art in a way. We went over adding a sensor. So this one is an effect that's in Photoshop. For this one, just taking the same image here, I've blurred out the eyes of the girl here. If you want to make something more anonymous, if you want to create a sensor for something, there's multiple different ways that you can do this. If you wanted to, you could use a black bar. In this case, we end up using a filter called Pixelate and Mosaic. It's a mosaic filter inside the Pixelate filter options. And this was able to give us that cool little, CSI Miami type of censorship that you usually see in videos, where they're trying to hide someone's identity. In last week's example, we blurred out license plate numbers. So the same type of thing applies here. We also created a dissolve type of effect. And this was the result, that we were able to get this girl's dress to look like it was, fading away, blowing off into little particles. And to do this, we end up using the liquefy tool. We created a couple different layers here to get this done. You can also do this in one layer using a smart object in Photoshop. But the main point is that by masking, we were able to use the liquefy effect to create a more bloated version of the girl, which is where all this extra pixelated red comes from. And then we were able to kind of paint it back into the scene to create this kind of effect that makes it look like she's kind of blowing away in the wind. And of course, I asked you to remember, I learned Photoshop. So even if you're not a master, you're on your way to learning not only Photoshop, but you're on your way to learning the ins and outs of image manipulation. So go ahead, celebrate, take this moment. This is a moment to pat yourself on the back. We're that much closer to getting a job in the industry here, or even just using these skills to better, whatever job you may already have, or your own skill set. Maybe you didn't know some of these things before. Maybe some of these effects were new to you, and now you can, do something more creative by either using one or all of them in your next project. So good job. So I'm going to start adding in a design exercise of the week. And for this one, this was pretty cool. I ran across this on Twitter just a little bit ago. And the person asked, which of these is the best button for logout? And so we had A, image on the left, logout on the right. And the image is pointing to the left. We have, again, B, and the image is always going to be on the left. The text for logout is on the right. And this time the arrow is pointing from right into the rounded rectangular square there. And so A is pointing to the left, B is pointing to the right, C is a red version of A, arrow pointing to the left, and D is a red version of B, where the arrow is pointing to the right. And this one was very interesting. You can take a second for yourself to kind of figure this out, which one you think is the best experience. But, trick question, someone replied and said, none. The arrow should be pointing outside of the rectangle or the door. And that was very interesting to kind of, see. And these are the types of things that we need to think about as designers. Most of the time, if you were pointing an arrow in to a shape, into this doorway, that will represent in, but we want to represent out. So this was very interesting to kind of wrap your mind around and to, take a moment to go over. So now we'll get into some Google Slides. That's what this week is about. We're taking a look at Google Slides, and we're going to get more involved in it over the course. This will be part one. We'll do a part two to this. There wasn't really enough time to really go into too much here, but we're going to start with shapes. So Google Slides is a presentation tool, and within it, we find shapes. So this is very similar to what we found in Photoshop. In Photoshop or any other program, you're probably going to work with shapes, and shapes are the foundational building block to what we're trying to accomplish. So I've highlighted here, you can go into the top menu and you'll see a little circle over a square, and with that, that's how you find your shapes. Now, Google Slides has many different shapes. There's squares, circles, triangles. Some of them are more helpful, some of them are less helpful in a way. there's certain applications that you can find. They don't have every single shape, and that's something that we'll probably cover at a later time. But for the most part, you'll find a lot of different shapes that will help you to be able to accomplish the type of goals that you're trying to accomplish when it comes to creating a presentation. We also look at type. So, what is a presentation without words? Of course, in the toolbar, you'll also find a type tool. And with that type tool, you're able to go ahead and create, put the words on the page so that you can help your audience to kind of understand the message of what you're going for. So this one's pretty simple as well. We can also add charts and graphs. Now this one's going to be very important if you're doing more of like a business presentation, if you're doing something that's kind of analytical, data driven, possibly. Someone may hand you an Excel sheet. You may also be just working in Google Sheets. The cool part about the charts that Google allows you to use is when you go into your Google Slides, there'll be an insert and you can add a chart, and there are a couple different options for charts that kind of give you, start you out, but you're also able to customize. These charts come automatically linked to a spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet allows you to then import different data and all that kind of stuff, and the chart that it's linked to will update dynamically. At the end of the day, the chart that is presenting is just an image representation, but the cool part about it is that it's linked to the spreadsheet, so you can just go ahead and start adding in the data that you're looking for and creating a chart that will help you to, again, get your point across. So when we look at Google Slides, now compared to Photoshop, we don't get all the fanciness of Photoshop. We're mostly working in layers here, and what we're missing are some of the image manipulation features, such as the channels. We don't really have access to channels. We have access to colors, but not channels in the same way. We also are missing the effects. So we don't have the pixelate, the liquefy, any type of blur effects. We do have some effects that are available, but not to the same degree. We'll be able to get into that a little bit later. So for right now, if you're keeping tally, Photoshop has layers, Google Slides has layers. They both have layers, and this is very important when it comes to crafting your slide and kind of understanding, where you're going with your presentation. Because again, we don't have as many features as we do in Photoshop and Google Slides. So to be able to manipulate the layers, that's something that's going to give us a desired effect for what we're trying to achieve when we're creating slides. So when it comes to layering, we want to make sure to use our layering to the best advantage that we can, whether it's just placing images and shapes right on top of each other, or if it's trying to place them next to each other and combine and use a little bit more creativity to kind of introduce new shapes that Google Slides may be lacking, so that you can get your point across. So taking an example here, we have a simple shape like this one, and through it we're able to make more complex graphics. So this simple shape is kind of an arrow shape, and what does an arrow represent? It kind of pushes our eye, in this case from left to right, because of the quality of an arrow, because of the diagonal lines that it boasts. So with those lines, it dynamically pushes our attention, our vision, in this case from left to right. And by stacking a couple of these together, we're actually able to achieve, in this case, a timeline. So using that simple arrow shape, we're able to put one next to the next one, next to the next one, next to the next one, and we give it a label. So by clicking into a shape, we're able to add some text into it, and then with that text, we can give it a label, 2018, 2019, 20. So now you kind of get the idea of how it's progressing from left to right to allow the person who's reading your presentation to understand that we're progressing in timeline, in years. And so also using color, we're able to nullify some of the arrows and show that, 2018 is a little further back, it's a little bit darker, it's not as clear based on the contrast of the slide and so forth. We're able to get good contrast by using a dark background, which is the arrow, and a light, which is the white text on top. We're able to get good contrast for, legibility. But for the most part, we're able to also nullify the left side and make it less important based on that quality, because it doesn't contrast as much against the background. This allows the user to kind of get a secondary level of understanding of how we're progressing from left to right, showing more importance the more contrast that we introduce into the graphics, all the way up to the very right arrow, which shows us 2023, the current year. I've highlighted that in green. So not only can we use different shades and values, but we can also use color as well. So we've used a simple shape. We've used contrast by varying the value of black and white that we're using in each different instance of the arrow. And we've also introduced color. So when it comes to black and white, those are values. When it comes to colors like red, green, blue, yellow, any other color that you can think of, those have their own properties, which may include a lightness and darkness, that gets close to black and white. But for the most part, black and white are somewhat different and at least separated from the colors, which we'll get into at a later point, understanding colors a little bit more. But for the most part, that's the main takeaway. So let's just go into a quick demonstration here. So based on what we've already talked about, I've opened up a new presentation, a new Google slide, and so I can go up to the top left and call this demo presentation. All right, and Google Slides will start us out with a theme. It's asking us to pick a theme on the side. I've already gone ahead and just picked simple dark, just to make sure the contrast wasn't too jarring here. As well as it starts us out with a single slide on the left side, which is what we're currently looking at in the full screen here. So once we have our setup, we have a basic idea of what we're going for. Now, let me go ahead and add another slide. So I'll right click on the left side panel, and we can do this with either Control or Command M, or we can just right click and press New Slide. With that, it will add another slide. And in this case, it gave me the same layout for my slide. So when it comes, it gave me a slightly different layout. So it gave me, right click, and we can go to Apply Layout to see some of the different options that we have for this slide. So there's a couple sitting here. This one will happen to be called Title and Body. And you can see that it has different variations of a dark screen, but ones that we can use to add emphasis. So let's go back before we change anything here to our very first slide. We're going to call this My Title Slide. So by clicking into the text that it's given us here, we're able to update the text and name it My Title Slide. And if we want to, this is Subcopy. So now if we're trying to get across an idea, maybe, we're trying to start a presentation, this is the title, any supporting copy that we might need to add, and then we're able to move on to the next slide, where this is our first point. And with that, we're able to go ahead and add, whatever type of text we need to be able to support, the point that we're trying to make. So in the year 1800, some stuff happened. So this kind of gets us started. And with this is the text that we were talking about. So as basis, if you're trying to create a presentation, you're most likely going to have to add some text to your slide in order for people to understand the points that you're going for. So far it's given me just 2 text boxes to work with. And with that, I've added in some text into each text box. Now, if I wanted to, I can go up to my text box here. I can click and drag to create a new text box. And that one allows me to type my own text. But the text is hard to read. So I can either highlight the text inside, or I could just get it to the point where I've selected the box. So by just selecting the bounding box, this is the box that's surrounding the text, I can go ahead and change the color of my text so that now it's more legible. And that's great. But you might want to also emphasize certain points. So by selecting just a portion of the text, you can then go ahead and change just a portion of what we're working with here. So that way you can start to add your own text and your own emphasis to the text depending on, certain factors. So that's working pretty well. So now I'm able to, continue on and maybe add another slide. This time I'll use Control M to add a new slide. And maybe I want to, as I said, insert a chart here. So with this chart, let me go ahead and make a bar chart. And now it brings in, or a pie chart, sorry. And now it goes ahead and brings in a pie chart. You can't do it, again, you can't really do much with the layout that it gives you here. It kind of, does its own thing. And if I size it down, in certain different ways, most likely in the sheets, which we'll go ahead and actually open that. So when we create our pie chart, we'll see a little link here that says linked chart options. We can either unlink it, see linked objects, or open the source. So if you're wondering, how it kind of created this pie chart in the first place, this is where it comes from. So, team 1 had 21%, team 2 had 32%, blah, blah, blah. Here's where it came from. So with this, we're able to go ahead and, if we want to, add a couple more teams. Let's go ahead and kind of drag that down. So we're not going to get into Google Sheets too much, but there's certain little shorthands you can do to be able to kind of copy some rows, etc. But with this, we can go ahead and add in some more data points. So I'm just going to make some stuff up on the fly. And as you can see, it's updating the chart to the right. And so based on this, what our chart is showing us is the percentage based on these point values that we've added to our sheet. So with that, I can go back over to my slide, and now we'll see that there's an update button next to the linked chart options link. With that, go ahead and click update, and now it's updated based on what we've done in the Google Sheet. Now, one thing that we will have to understand is that, again, this chart is really just a pictorial representation of what's going on in Google Sheets. So if we want to actually get fancy with the chart, there's a lot of blue sections here, which kind of can get a little confusing if we're trying to either emphasize something or, make one of them stand out. From our Google Sheet, we don't really have any options to do much with this. In fact, it's treating it just like an image. So as you can see, you can double click into it and it will give you these kind of crop tools, crop bounding boxes. And so it's not really giving us a lot of options. So if we wanted to change stuff about it, we'd have to actually go into the spreadsheet and possibly double click on one of the pie slices and change the color of it if we want to emphasize a portion of it. And with that, once again, we'll come back to our presentation, update, and there we go. Now we have one of the slices displaying as red versus some of the other ones that are displaying as blue. Previously it was blue, now I've given it a little more emphasis. So I'll go ahead and add another slide to the presentation. And with this, now we've already taken a look at some of the layouts that it allows us to use. One of the things we can also do is add a background. So with the background, right now it's a dark background, it's a black background. We can actually go ahead and add our own background. So let's say dog, first one, it's a good one. I'm pretty sure Google sources some stock or like copyright free images. So for the most part, if you're doing a presentation, you're probably gonna be fine getting away with this stuff. Don't quote me on that, but I've noticed that it tends to have not the same search results as normal. But with that, now I've added our own background to this, and so now we can say, how cute. Because now we have our own dog presented here. Something that I want to, as I get into the next portion, which is going to be themes. So initially, and as you've seen as I've gone along here, I started out with this black template slide, and as I right click, I can right click on the slide itself. I can apply layout, and it gives me a couple of different layouts here, and those are nice if I'm looking to use any one of those, but they're all black, and you know, possibly that isn't the color that my team uses, that my project is going to use. And if you don't like any of the other themes on the right side, the pre-made themes, you are able to make custom themes. So with that, we can actually go into our toolbar layout here and click on theme. And we can either import a theme from another project, or we can come back up to the toolbar, press view, and then go to theme builder, the third option down. And now we're getting under the hood of Google Slides. In Google Slides, it allows you to select a theme, which is basically the general feeling, or at least it should be, of how your presentation looks. If you're making a consistent presentation, then most of your slides will probably have a similar feel to them. Now, let me double click on one of the slides in the film strip on the left side. Now, I don't like this font here, Arial. Very generic. It's what the theme came with. It doesn't really look that good based on the needs that I'm looking for. So, coming back into View and Theme Builder, I can actually go to this very first slide here, and it has some oddity to what it's showing here. The first part is supposed to be like a title type of text area. The second part's supposed to kind of show the hierarchy of how bullet points will kind of lay out. We're able to actually control a lot of that from here, but I won't get too into the weeds on this one just yet. For now, let me go ahead and actually show you kind of where that came from. So if you go to Insert, I can actually add slide numbers here. Let me actually go ahead and use this one instead. So instead of doing it on the main theme, which, just to illustrate my point, let me go ahead and change this Arial to this one called Bungee. And now, if you noticed in the little thumbnails over here, every other slide has changed to begin using that Bungee theme that we just picked out here. I'll go ahead and undo that real quick so that we can just see. If you look at the thumbnails changed back. more time, I'll just redo it. And the thumbnails will update to the theme, the font we just chose. So this first theme card is going to give you some options for your placeholders. So just to illustrate the placeholders, I'm actually going to go down to this last slide. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to duplicate, and then I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to call this one My Slide. And now with that, I'll go ahead and insert a placeholder, which will be a title placeholder. We'll go ahead and draw that right up there. So in this case, it's adding in its own style. For these other ones, I have to look into exactly why they changed on their own and see if we can get that for our version. But our version is not currently taking the style that we assigned initially, so maybe if we just reassign, let's try Roboto here. Let's see what it does for ours. Ours is still Arial. So any slides that we add in here, we're gonna have to begin custom formatting. With that, if we want to, we can create the title again. Let me just make sure that we do have, in fact, okay, so yes. So this is, we're gonna have to style this ourselves, but for the most part, we're able to create placeholders here. And what the placeholders are, these will be elements that appear on the slides and will kind of guide whoever you probably hand off this slide to understand, either placement or, where to put titles, etc. So this is kind of a foolproof way to say, hey, if you wanted to, don't, do too much with the slide. Our corporate brand says that we need to have this font and this theme, etc. And so as the person goes back into their own editing mode and they add a new slide, then they'll see all the way, it should be at the bottom here, My Slide. And with My Slide, I've added in the text area box so that I can type in this area and it will create the element that I'm looking for, and it's already in place for what the company brand and guidelines might be looking for. So is the subtitle. So this way, if you want to, kind of stay consistent throughout any of your presentations, you can do that by going to Theme Builder and building that theme to have the elements that you're looking for. Now, we also have placeholders. We have placeholder for title, subtitle, body text, which is that weird list of different level items here. When you type into it in your own work, it doesn't come in as that, but it lets you know what the different bullet points will look like if you were to have bullet points. So if we were to have bullets, and I'm going to press Control-Shift-8 here to create a bullet. So this creates our first level bullet. Then if I tab to create a second level bullet, and again I can tab, and if you're catching on here to what I'm doing, I'm creating the bullet level structure that Theme Builder said that we have. Filled in circle, hollow circle, square. Filled in circle, hollow circle, square. And so that kind of gave us an idea of, using the Theme Builder, what bullet level points will look like if we were to go to these different levels. But this is also doubling as the body text placeholder. We also have image text or image placeholders, which will add in or take the place of an image. So if we want to, we can go back again to our theme create a new slide once more. Go to our layout. And now if we wanted to put an image in here, it already is looking for an image. So let's go ahead and put a cat. Do. So now we've added in an image. Our title goes here, subtitle goes there, body text goes there, and we still have the option to delete any of this or just kind of leave it as is. Now the brilliance of the placeholder is that it doesn't show up in the actual preview. So because we didn't edit the placeholder, it doesn't show up, even though it's still on the slide in the editing mode. Now if I type here and then go into the preview mode, now the text shows up. The subtitle text is still missing because I didn't add anything there, but where I have edited it, it will show up. One way that this kind of gets a little tricky is if you copy this text, sometimes Google Slides can get a little mixed up between different, it's looking at the placeholder object and trying to, and understanding that bounding box as the placeholder object. It's not understanding it as just simple text that you added on yourself. New text. It's not understanding it as new text that you just added on yourself. It's understanding it as the placeholder bounding box. So this can get a little wonky if you're copying and pasting those placeholder bounding boxes, but for the most part, this is how it basically works. And with that, you're able to create your themes, add your images, and you can even add in little elements that will kind of help you to create a consistent spacing in between your slides. So in this case, let me go ahead and add a shape. So this is just a regular shape that I'm going to add here. Now, when you add placeholders, the placeholders are a bit magical because they allow you to edit them after the fact. So when we're in the editing mode, when we're in our theme builder mode, or when we're in editing mode, we're able to edit our placeholders. And this gives us a good idea of where everything will fall and be able to add, our text here and there. Now, this shape, however, is just a regular shape. I'm just gonna highlight this in blue. Placing shapes, images, charts, etc. onto a themed slide will cause it to be permanently glued to the slide. So let me go back to where I have this. So let me get rid of the cat just for the time being. So now I can select my type, and if I wanted to move this a little closer to the line, I could. I can move this subtitle. So the title I moved closer to the line, subtitle moved a little further away. This copied subtitle or title I'll get rid of just for clarity's sake. And then if I want to move the line, however, I'm not able to select the line. The only thing I'm able to do is go into my theme builder and perhaps create a new slide by duplicating this. If I want everything to be the same, but I just don't want the line, I can have both. So this one is called, we'll call this my new slide. And we'll go ahead without line, just to give a little more clarity. So now we have this slide, this themed slide that has the blue line as the separator, and we made a copy of it just to make one that doesn't have the separator. So now when I go back, so even though I can't click on the separator line, now I can go to apply layout, And I have my slide here, which has the blue line on it, but I have my new slide without line, and I can easily swap back and forth between the two. So that gets us then into the idea of how can we start to manipulate these slides to build our own theme, to begin to build something that is going to work, throughout. So we have the option of creating placeholders, and within this placeholder, you can't edit the text in the placeholder. It always will say, click to edit theme title slide. But we can also bring in new elements. So in this case, let me just add in a text box. And this will be permanent text. So just like we added in a permanent line by adding in that rectangle, that blue rectangle, we can add in permanent text. Let's go ahead and actually add in an image. Let's put blue because this is going to also be permanent. So with this, let's say we're a company that works with glue, and so we have whatever type of disclaimer. We have a disclaimer that needs to go on every single slide. We also have this image that needs to go on every single slide in a way, or at least this is what this slide's purpose is for. So now when we go back to our theme, we'll look for simple dark section header. We'll go back to our editing mode, right click, apply layout, and we'll add the section header. So now this disclaimer text is permanently there. So is the image. Because we did not add it as a placeholder, we added it as just regular text and just a regular image. So it's only editable through the theme builder. So if I want to move it over here, now we'll update on the slide in the editing mode, but it's only editable through the theme builder. So as annoying as that can kind of be, it can also be a little bit safe. So again, if you're trying to only allow your user or whoever is editing the slide to do certain things, or if there needs to be certain aspects of the slide on each slide, then this is kind of how you can get it done. I'm also going to go into here, the first theme slide, and delete, if you notice, the little number. So in the same vein of saying that there needs to be a consistent item or object on every single slide, maybe you want to number every single slide, in which case we can go to our main theme slide, insert slide numbers, and we'll have it on skip title slides. We'll leave off for now, and we'll apply. So it brought back the number that's in the bottom right corner, and we'll go ahead and add Garamond to it just so that we can see it in a moment. But now that number is going to be Garamond, and on every single slide here, including some of the ones that we just created a moment ago. And this one actually, because the main theme should apply to all, but within that you also have your sub theme, your layout screens, which allow you to then change what is applied to each one. So let's say just on this one, let's go ahead and make this orange color. It should become an orange color. There we go. So now when I go back to my editing, I'll have a number, and it's a placeholder. So again, I can rename it or delete it or get rid of it if I want to, and we'll have it appear on every single slide here. And then when we get to the slide that is going to be my new slide, now it's in orange, or we can change it again to a different color. So now it's in red. So with that, we're able to start to build our presentation, and that we'll have to get into at a different time. So, but for right now, we kind of got a taste of what this is all about. So with that, we're able to see that Google Slides will allow us to do some pretty cool stuff. It'll allow us to build graphics, build themes, and start to think about this as an image editing, software in a way. It's not as powerful as Photoshop, but it is worth understanding how we can kind of get a little bit fancy using the tools that it allows us to use. So we kind of just scratched the surface. We'll get a little more in depth in it next week. But for right now, this is just a taste of what's going on here. So with that, I'd like to thank you for joining us. I'd like to, congratulate you for making it through another week, and I hope you're the best in your journey here. So continue to follow along as we explore more about Google Slides next week. And with that, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to share the video with someone who may, benefit from it, someone else who's trying to get into the industry. Again, this is a community. There's a lot of room, a lot of jobs out there, and we're trying to help everyone to, get ahead in life here. So if anyone's, looking for a career change, if anyone's looking to develop their skills, if anyone's looking for, just learning opportunities, or even a community to learn and grow in, we'd love to share the message with everyone who's out there. So don't forget to leave a comment, ask any questions, if I got anything wrong, if I got anything right that you agree with, go ahead, leave your comments in the comment section there. I'll be glad to answer any questions. I'll be glad to, respond and take a look through all the comments and, see what you had to say. So with that, thank you again for showing up. Glad to have you here. And as always, in the appendix, there are some links to any of the softwares that you might want to try out. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.